Before the video begins, just know that Bloodborne was my first Souls-1 game and I actually gave up when I first got the game. After a month, I returned to the game and it just clicked. Bloodborne is one of the best games, if not the best game, I've ever had the privilege to play. The footage shown on the screen will not contain any spoilers. All of the footage shown is from the first area of the game. Bloodborne is free for PS Plus members, so please download this game. You've got nothing to lose. This video is intended for beginners, but veterans who are returning to Bloodborne for the Return to Yharnam event can also refresh their memories by briefly watching the video. Let's start with character creation first. Make sure to take the time to create your perfect waifu because the game doesn't let you change your character's face after this point. Now for beginners, you might be confused as to what class you might want to start with. I'll be honest here, it doesn't really matter. Sure, there are classes that are more geared towards certain builds, but ultimately it doesn't make that big of a difference. But we'll still look into all of our options. Milquetoast is a very balanced character class. Lone Survivor has a lot of health. Troubled Childhood has a lot of stamina. Violent Past is good for folks looking for slow but hard-hitting weapons. Professional is good for players looking for swift weapons. Military Veteran has a lot of skill and strength, so you can have a huge arsenal of weapons at your feet. Noble Scion is good if you're looking for more gun damage. Cruel Fate is for the wizards out there, and Waste of Skin is for abnormalities who hate themselves. For beginners, I would suggest staying away from Waste of Skin and Cruel Fate. Waste of Skin's downfall is pretty obvious, and as for Cruel Fate, magic builds aren't too viable early game. Remember that you can only level up after you've gained some insight. Insight is a secondary currency in the game, and you can buy some neat stuff at this vendor. You get insight by consuming Madman's knowledge, encountering and beating bosses, and discovering new areas. After you have gained insight, you gotta visit the doll in the Hunter's Dream. Select the Channel Blood Echoes option and boom, that's how you level up. I bet a lot of you have no idea of what these fancy stats actually do. Well, let's break them down. Bloodborne has 6 base stats, of which 4 are offensive stats and 2 are supplementary stats. Vitality increases your health and endurance increases your stamina. Now, strength and skill are used to bump up your weapon's attack rating depending on said weapon. Blood Tinge is used to strengthen firearms for the most part, and Arcane is used to strengthen your spells. Now the first 5 stats have a soft cap and a hard cap. Basically, soft cap is a point where the stat you level up doesn't give you as much benefit as it used to, but still gives you a decent boost. Hard cap is the point where you should probably stop leveling up the particular stat because it doesn't give a significant boost. For vitality, the soft cap is 30 and hard cap is 50. Endurance doesn't have a soft cap, but there is a hard cap at 40. Strength, skill, and blood tinge shares a 25 soft cap and 50 hard cap. Arcane doesn't have a soft cap or a hard cap, so you can go full ham with Arcane. Oh, and you can't respec your character, so when you level up, think it through. Also, as you level up, subsequent levels will cost you more blood echoes, the game's currency. You get blood echoes by killing your enemies. You can also acquire them by selling items and by using certain consumables. When you die to the beast at the beginning, you'll be teleported to your main hub, the Hunter's Dream. When you interact with the messengers on the stairs, you can choose one weapon and one firearm of your choice. The Hunter's Axe is a slow but hard-hitting weapon. The Threaded Cane is a swift weapon that can also be transformed into a whip. It doesn't deal a whole lot of damage, but it's fun to use and it's super quick. The Saw Cleaver is a healthy balance between the Hunter's Axe and the Threaded Cane. I would suggest beginners to use this weapon for pretty much the entire game. As you progress through the game, you get more weapons by either finding them or buying them from these path messengers. All the weapons in Bloodborne are viable and you can beat any boss with any weapon. Weapons have two forms, the normal mode and the transform mode. You can transform any weapon in the game by pressing L1. The two modes often have drastically different movesets, so essentially you're getting two weapons in one package. You can also chain combos together by pressing L1 when you're in the middle of an attack animation. You can also perform transforming attacks immediately after a roll or a dash. This makes combat very interesting, to say the least. Well, you can increase the damage of your weapon by leveling up the weapon, leveling up your character, and by adding gems. The gem system will be introduced to you after the first mandatory boss. You level up your weapon by using bloodstone shards at the workshop. Note that you'll have to acquire higher tier shards as you keep leveling up your weapon. You can upgrade a weapon up to 10 times. If you go to your equipment and you view the thread cane, you see some alphabets tied to some symbols. You might recognize these symbols, I hope. Well, these symbols are your offensive stats. Now for the thread cane, you can see that the skill scaling is C, and strength is an E, and arcane is a D. Obviously you'd want to level up skill to get the most out of the thread cane. As you upgrade your weapon, your scaling increases, so you can actually get your scaling up to S rating by upgrading and using certain gems. If the scaling is pretty high for a stat, then you reap more benefits by leveling up that stat. Pretty simple actually. Now let's get to gems. These are equipment for your weapons. You get better gems by progressing through the game, or you can farm them in the challenge dungeons. There are gems that can increase your scaling and completely change your build. All the weapons have an arcane scaling, but they don't get the benefit from the stat unless you have an arcane gem etched into the weapon. Combat in Bloodborne is a little bit different when compared to the other Souls games. When you lock onto the target, you dash instead of roll, and you roll when you aren't locked on. Dodging isn't all about getting away from your enemy's attack. You can use iframes to dodge them by timing your roll or dash. Iframes are invincibility frames you get during actions like rolling, dashing, interacting, and during visceral attacks. You don't roll away during attacks for the most part, you roll or dash through them. It's pretty badass, to be honest. That's why people say dodging in these games is all about positioning and timing. Now that we have that out of the way, let's move on to the rally system. In Bloodborne, when you get hit, your health can be gained back by attacking your enemy before the orange part in your health bar disappears. But after that's gone, you gotta heal it back. But the caveat here is that you'll get greedy and you'll end up getting killed pretty easily. The game rewards you for being aggressive, not reckless. You can increase the amount of health you gain back by using certain gems. Let's talk about visceral attacks now. Visceral attacks have a very wild and cool animation, but they also do a crap ton of damage if your skill stat is pretty high. Visceral attacks only scale with skill and no other offensive stat. You can get a visceral attack by doing one of two things, parrying or backstabbing. You use your gun to parry enemies. They're pea shooters unless you heavily invest in blood tinge and gems. You can parry by shooting the enemy during their attack animation if you time it right. If you get it right, you get a sound sent by the heavens above and your enemies fall to their knees. Now you just walk up to them and press R1. Boom. There you have it. Remember that not all enemies can be parried. Same goes for backstabbing. Now let's talk about backstabs. When you hold down the R2 button and connect with your opponent's back, you get the same sound and same animation as, parrying. You just press R1 when you walk up to their back and boom, you got it. You are now ready to face the horrors of Yana. This section just has some general stuff you want to keep in mind. First thing being blood vials. You'll be farming a lot of these when you're stuck on a boss, and oh boy, it isn't fun. What I personally do is I level up and I use my remaining blood echoes to buy blood vials. Throughout the entire game, you'll come across doors and windows with lanterns. Interact with these doors and windows. Behind these are NPCs, and you can send them to your hub, or they might give you a sweet item or something. The entirety of Bloodborne's story is told through NPC interactions and item descriptions. So read the description of every single item you come across. Let's talk about the bosses. There are optional bosses and there are mandatory bosses. The first area has one optional and one mandatory boss. Now, the trick to huge bosses is you gotta stick to their asses. You dodge through their attacks and get behind them and do your thing. As for humanoid bosses, parrying goes a long way. Also explore every nook and cranny. It's worth it. If you can, play this game with headphones. It really adds to the atmosphere. You gotta find shortcuts to make your run back to the boss you're stuck on, and well, if you don't, trust me, it's going to drive you nuts. Usually it's an elevator or a gate you can only open from the other side. If you're having too much trouble with a boss, then ring your beckoning bell and just hope someone gets summoned to your world. You can use the small resonant bell to help out other players. Now, I don't want to talk about the PvP in this game because it's, for the most part, actually trash. One last thing. This is personal preference, but I'll mention it. In the option menu, set the brightness to, 2, I guess? I think that's what I use. 2, and crank the music up to 10. This is how I play the game, and I really like this setup. Well, that wraps up the video. If you can, definitely buy the Old Hunters expansion. It's fucking amazing. Happy hunting.